Every young chef dreams of stepping into a Michelin kitchen. But the reality? You'll be judged on skills that go far beyond recipes. These 5 tests aren't just about technique, they're about showing your discipline, attention to detail, and willingness to grow. We're breaking down what it takes to pass the ultimate chef test.
At dinner, which is a 2 Michelin-star restaurant, we would basically put the commis chefs or any other chef through a series of tests which demonstrate a lot of the skills that you do need to have in order to work and be successful in Michelin kitchens. We would always make the chefs who are coming in prep violet artichokes because it demonstrates a certain amount of skill and some old school techniques such as turning vegetables. So yeah, this was one of the first jobs that I did. Jack Croft, my now business partner, he was putting me through my paces on artichokes when I started at dinner. And basically what I've got here is some citric acid. So what we're looking for when you're working as a commis on a trial in a 2 Michelin-star restaurant or any Michelin-star restaurant is sort of speed, but also mainly attention to detail. I think the worst thing that you can be as like a commis chef is quick without attention to detail, because for me a commis is an entry-level position, so there's no expectation that someone is going to come into this kitchen and absolutely crush out the prep. There is an expectation that they listen to instruction, reproduce it perfectly. This is called a turning knife, or we call them in the trade Tina Turner. What you're looking at for in a trialist, attention to detail in terms of equipment. Have they come to the job with a Sharpie? You know, do they have the right footwear? Do they have the right uniform? Have they ironed their chef wires? Almost like sometimes now it seems like we're being pernickety, but it kind of says everything about you. If you have the right equipment and you have the right knives, it basically means that you've done your research and you kind of know what is going to be expected of you in the role. That's a beautifully turned artichoke. So if a trialist came and did that, I'd be pretty happy. Okay, so once you've got your artichoke like this, take it down. And just using the very tip of your knife. This is called a choke. You can see this is just not the most pleasant thing to eat. Just go around gently with your knife and then scoop that out. That's a perfectly turned artichoke. Okay, so next up, chives. Now chives are a proper point of pride for most chefs. We used to always make chefs on their trial do the chives for us. So they would do the chives to the pass. They would be inspected by the head chef, which is obviously, as you can imagine, a bit of a daunting thing. I had to do it when I came onto my trial as well. I just remember them looking at them questionably. I went home that night and did a load of research, and the sort of voice of authority on how to chop proper chives is actually Thomas Keller, and this is the way that he prescribes is the right way to do chives. Chives is an amazing thing to test someone's ability, because effectively what you're measuring is their attention to detail and, more importantly, the sharpness of their knife. So Thomas Keller always says that you should just take a very small bunch of chives. It has been a while since I read the book, so please leave in the comments if I missed something out. So you take a damp cloth, this is a seafold, and then you just gently turn that up at the bottom of the bunch of chives. Obviously, you know when you're chopping chives, the main problem is they're always moving around all over the place. This is a large knife. I always like using a slicer for chives because it feels a little bit more precise. And then, now, am I actually realistically going to say that this is how I train my chefs to cut chives? Absolutely not. This is an amazing symbol for what Michelin, in a way, kind of means. It's taken every possible step to show the absolute utmost respect for the chives that you've got. There's even an Instagram page online called Rate My Chives, which just always gives me a little bit of a chuckle, but that just shows you like the level of pride that people take in their chives. Go there and show them that you know how Chef Keller likes his chives. One of the last kind of like prep skill jobs that you could ask someone to do would be a Brunoise. Again, a very specific fine knife work that a lot of chefs take a hell of a lot of pride in. The reason that you do a Brunoise is because something like a shallot can have quite a strong flavour. So making that as fine as possible, for me, is always really, really important. You take your half of shallot and then cut it in half again. And then the smaller ones you don't really need to. And then this is just going to give you a really perfect flat surface if you look. If you don't half it, the shallot will often tend to split or break. You're going to use the length of your knife to cut some nice, perfect sort of a julienne all the way across. Okay? I think it just demonstrates another technique. Is it different to the chives? Not really. It's fine knife work. And then to finish, take that and then And then we're just going to go all the way down the length. Try and keep them straight, and then you'll get a perfect tiny little cube. And I'm going to show you the difference. Now this is a perfectly good way to dice shallot, but you will see the difference. It's not quite as sharp. And this happened when I was on a trial with someone. I said, right, do a quick Brunoise for me. I turned back around and he'd done it really, really quickly, and he was like very proud of himself. But if you look at the difference here, you know, you've got one which is basically what not to do, essentially, a far cry from what you're meant to do, which is this very, very fine, ultra fine, beautiful Brunoise. One of the other things that we would always send one of the trialists around to do is line a pastry case. What we would do is you'd take a lump of pastry and then just put it between two pieces of greaseproof and then roll it out to the right thickness. Pastry is one of those things, not many chefs see it as their obligation to learn pastry. So if you're an aspiring chef and you don't have any pastry skills, it is going to be almost virtually impossible to open your own restaurant. I don't know if there's a little bit of like masculine bravado there, but effectively, like in my opinion, and this could light up the comment section, but chefs and pastry chefs tend to be very different. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a pastry chef. Like, it's not my, I don't have the patience for it. But I work with some incredible pastry chefs. You know, even if it's not your cup of tea, you need to know the basics. My first ever job in a kitchen was a kitchen porter. When I moved from being a kitchen porter in a shitty Italian restaurant in Sheffield, I moved on to a pastry section in a 2-rosette restaurant up in the countryside. So what I've done is I've just put the tart case in, but what you want with a pastry case is you want it to be nice and thin. So I pushed it very tightly against the rim of the mold, and now I'm just going to take my finger and go all the way around here into the bottom. Is I just take my rolling pin, go over, do a slight pinch, and take it up over the lip. And that means that when it cooks, you won't get the shrinkage that can make it look a little bit not quite as grandiose, and it means you can get more mix in there, and everyone likes a nice fat tart, no pun intended. One of the final things that you could easily be expected to do on a trial is make a 3-egg omelette. A lot of people think that they're going to be asked to cook a dish or something like that. I've never seen that happen in a restaurant. Making a dish in a completely mysterious person's kitchen is a tough task, like even for an accomplished chef. But 3-egg omelette is pretty simple, and also not too expensive if you mess it up. When I went and did my trial at dinner, I didn't have any of these skills. Pretty much not one of them. I could make an okay omelette, I guess. Especially in the like two Michelin stars, 3 Michelin stars. There's an expectation when you go in there. But in most kitchens, if you're applying for a commie and you've got no experience, I really wouldn't let it hold you back. When I got my job at dinner, which is a 2-star, I wrote a list of restaurants down when I came down to London on my phone, and then I was super interested in food history, so dinner was like the perfect restaurant for that. But I showed up with my knives. They have a whole HR team, so they got super confused. They were like, oh, this guy shouldn't be on trial today. There were 2 other people on trial that day, probably all with more experience than me. I mean, basically I hustled my way in, and I was very nice to the team. I was very respectful to people. I got there early. I offered to stay late and clean down with the guys. And essentially what I'm saying is, like, basically attitude is everything. And at Fallow now, we don't, there is not an expectation that you come with all these skills. The expectation is that you come ready to learn and you come with an amazing attitude. All the other skills, that's kind of our job to fill you in. What we've done is we've got our omelette to the stage where it's very soft scrambled eggs, and then we stopped, and then we season the top. I always season the top rather than seasoning it throughout. And then just lightly turn it over. This is a Maurice, so you're just using the Maurice just to get a really nice shape on it. Working it all the way down to the bottom of the pan. And then once you've got down to the bottom like that, flip it out like that. Glaze up with a little bit more butter at the end. But remember that the most important thing basically is attitude. Ultimately, if you go in as a commie, that's the expectation, is you're willing to learn, you work clean, you show up to work on time, you don't get too pissed at night and then show up late for work. And ultimately you're respectful and generally a nice person to work with. That'll make people happier to teach or train you, and that'll make you be able to progress quicker.